In the vast expanse of space, where countless civilizations waged their cosmic wars, I found myself stationed among the most peculiar species I'd ever encountered, humans. As a veteran soldier of the Galactic Alliance with over 300 cycles of combat experience across 12 star systems, I thought I'd seen it all, but nothing could have prepared me for what I witnessed in the Earth's military forces. My first shock came during what they called basic training. While our species relied on neural implants and virtual simulations for combat preparation, these humans insisted on physically pushing their bodies to the absolute limit. Through rain, snow, and scorching heat, they'd run for kilometers carrying heavy gear, crawl through mud under live fire, and willingly subject themselves to sleep deprivation, all without any technological enhancements. Their drill instructors would shout at them with such ferocity that I initially thought it was some form of psychological warfare. But remarkably, this seemingly harsh treatment forged an unbreakable bond between the soldiers. They called it shared suffering, a concept that baffled our military strategists who prioritized efficiency and individual excellence. What truly set them apart, however, was their unpredictability in combat. While other species, including my own, followed carefully calculated battle protocols, humans seemed to thrive in chaos. They'd improvise weapons from everyday objects, devise strategies that defied conventional logic, and display a level of adaptability that made them both fascinating and terrifying allies. I remember watching in disbelief as a human squad turned a devastating ambush into a victory using nothing but a broken communication device, some local wildlife, and what they called duct tape, a primitive adhesive that they treated like some sort of magical artifact. Their commander later told me, with a strange gleam in their eyes, sometimes the craziest plan is the only one that works. But perhaps the most shocking aspect was their concept of leave no one behind. In our military doctrine, sacrificing a few for the success of the mission was standard protocol. Humans, however, would risk entire operations, even their own lives, to rescue a single wounded comrade. I once saw a soldier sprint through heavy enemy fire to drag an injured teammate to safety, an action that our tactical computers would have classified as illogical, with a 98.7% chance of failure. As I continue my observation of Earth's military forces, I can't help but wonder if we've been approaching warfare all wrong. These humans, with their imperfect bodies and primitive technology, have achieved something that all our advanced systems and perfect discipline couldn't. They've made unpredictability their greatest weapon and turned emotional bonds into an unstoppable force. The longer I stayed with the human forces, the more their methods challenged everything I thought I knew about warfare. During my third month embedded with their unit, we received intelligence about a Drachnid hive fleet approaching one of Earth's outer colonies. By all logical calculations, evacuation was the only viable option. The colony's defenses were minimal, and reinforcements were days away. But the humans refused to accept these odds. Their commanding officer gathered the troops and laid out a plan so audacious that my neural processors nearly crashed trying to compute its probability of success. They intended to use the colony's mining equipment to create a makeshift defense network, turning simple drilling machines into anti-spacecraft weapons. What followed was a display of ingenuity that still haunts my memory banks. The colonists and soldiers worked together, reproposing industrial lasers, converting atmospheric processors into electromagnetic pulse generators, and transforming the colony's waste management system into a planet-wide early warning network. All this was accomplished with technology that my species would consider obsolete. The most perplexing aspect was their morale. Despite facing near certain doom, the humans maintained what they called gallows humor, making jokes about their situation and even organizing a celebration the night before the expected attack. They called it a Last Supper, though everyone spoke as if they fully expected to survive the coming battle. Their unorthodox preparations extended to their combat tactics. Rather than establishing a traditional defensive perimeter, they created what they called a home alone protocol. A reference I later learned came from an ancient human entertainment program about elaborate traps. They turned the entire colony into a labyrinth of booby traps, ambush points, and false targets. When the Drachnid fleet arrived, I witnessed something that defied all military logic. Instead of cowering in fear at the sight of a force that outnumbered them 100 to 1, the humans seemed almost excited. Their commanding officer's words still echo in my memory. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the greatest show of the galaxy. Let's give our guests a proper Earth welcome." The battle that followed was unlike anything in my combat records. The humans used the planet's mineral dust to blind the Drachnid sensors, led their ships into carefully prepared killing zones, and somehow managed to turn the colony's sewage treatment facility into an improvised missile launcher. Their tactics were so unpredictable that the Drachnid hive mind, famous for its ability to calculate and counter any strategy, appeared completely confused. But what truly made me question everything was watching a young human engineer risk their life to protect not just their fellow soldiers, but also the colony's data centers containing what they called cat videos, apparently a form of cultural treasure I still don't fully understand. The dedication to preserving both lives and what they considered important aspects of their civilization demonstrated a depth of purpose that my species had never considered relevant to warfare. As the battle raged on, the situation grew increasingly dire. The Drachnid forces, despite their initial confusion, began adapting to our unconventional tactics. Their hive mind was learning, evolving its strategies with each passing moment. The colony's makeshift defenses, brilliant as they were, started showing signs of strain under the relentless alien assault. I observed with growing concern as the humans' ammunition reserves dwindled. Their improvised weapons, while ingenious, consumed power at an alarming rate. The electromagnetic pulse generators were on their last cycle, and the reproposed mining lasers were beginning to overheat. By my calculations, we had less than an hour before our defenses would completely fail. But instead of despair, I witnessed something extraordinary. The humans began singing an ancient battle song they called Fortunate Son. The colony's defenders coordinated their efforts through a mix of music and inside jokes, maintaining their efficiency even as exhaustion set in. Their ability to find strength in what appeared to be chaos continued to baffle my tactical programming. Then came the moment that would forever change my understanding of human warfare. Our sensors detected a massive Drachnid carrier breaking through the atmosphere, carrying enough troops to overwhelm our remaining defenses. The logical course of action was to surrender and minimize casualties. Instead, the human commander gathered their remaining forces for what they called Operation Last Laugh. The plan they devised was nothing short of insanity. Using the colony's damaged atmospheric processors, they intended to create a localized storm system right in the path of the descending carrier. The risks were astronomical. One miscalculation could tear the colony apart. As I watched them prepare, I finally understood why the galaxy's most advanced civilizations feared these seemingly primitive warriors. The entire colony now hinged on a plan that defied every military doctrine I'd ever known. As the massive Drachnid ship descended through the clouds, I couldn't help but wonder, had I just witnessed humanity's greatest display of tactical genius, or their most spectacular moment of collective madness? Just as Operation Last Laugh was about to commence, our long-range sensors detected something that made even the most seasoned human veterans pause. A second Drachnid fleet emerging from hyperspace. But this wasn't just any fleet. Through my neural interface, I recognized the distinct energy signature of the Drachnid Queen's personal armada. The humans had somehow managed to draw the attention of the highest authority in the Drachnid hierarchy. The colony's command center erupted into a flurry of activity. The original plan, already desperate, now seemed hopelessly inadequate against this new threat. The Queen's presence meant we faced not just superior numbers, but also their most advanced weaponry and their most experienced warriors. I watched the human commander's face, expecting to see defeat. Instead, I saw something that my species would classify as clinically insane. They were smiling. The commander quickly modified Operation Last Laugh, incorporating elements that seemed to come from what humans called action movies. They began retrofitting the colony's largest mining drill with the remains of our electromagnetic pulse generators. Their plan now involved not just creating a storm, but using it to mask something even more audacious. The human soldiers moved with renewed purpose, their exhaustion seemingly forgotten in the face of even worse odds. What truly caught me off guard was overhearing two human engineers discussing how this reminded them of something called David versus Goliath. When I queried my cultural database about this reference, I began to understand something profound about human warfare. They didn't just accept impossible odds, they reveled in them. Each new challenge seemed to unlock another layer of their creative potential. As the Queen's fleet drew closer, I noticed something else. The humans had stopped singing their battle songs. In their place was a focused silence that even my advanced sensors found unnerving. They were preparing something that went beyond mere tactical innovation. Whatever they had planned, it was clear that this battle would either become a legendary victory or their final stand. The modified Operation Last Laugh began with spectacular failure, exactly as the humans had planned. The atmospheric processors created a storm, but it appeared to malfunction, spreading chaos throughout our own defenses instead of targeting the enemy. The Drachnid Queen's fleet, sensing victory, moved in closer to deliver the final blow. That's when I witnessed true human ingenuity in action. The malfunctioning storm was a calculated deception. As the Drachnid ships entered the atmosphere, the humans activated their real weapon, the retrofitted mining drill, now converted into what they called a gravity well generator. The storm's electromagnetic interference had masked its energy signature perfectly. The device created a localized gravitational field that caught the Queen's flagship in its pull. Their advanced shields, designed to repel energy weapons and physical impacts, proved useless against this primitive but effective trap. The massive ship, along with its escort vessels, began an unstoppable descent toward the colony's surface. But the true genius of the human plan wasn't in bringing down the ship. It was in what happened next. As the Drachnid fleet struggled against the gravitational pull, the humans broadcast a message across all frequencies. "Your Majesty, we apologize for the rough landing. Would you care to discuss terms of surrender over a cup of coffee?" The audacity of offering hospitality to an enemy they just forced into a controlled crash was quintessentially human. Even more shocking was the Queen's response. After centuries of ruling through fear and absolute authority, she laughed. It was the first recorded instance of a Drachnid queen expressing amusement, and it changed the course of the war. As I watched the human commanders share their colony's traditional welcome drink with one of the galaxy's most feared rulers, I finally understood why my superiors had sent me to study Earth's military. We hadn't been observing potential adversaries. We'd been learning from the only species capable of turning warfare into diplomacy through sheer unpredictability and what they called having a sense of humor. The greatest victory that day wasn't won through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through something uniquely human, the ability to find common ground in the most unlikely situations. As the Queen sipped her coffee, commenting on its fascinating bitterness, I realized that perhaps the most powerful weapon in human warfare wasn't their ability to fight, but their knack for making peace in the most unexpected ways. In the months following that extraordinary day, I watched as the colony transformed into something unprecedented, the first joint human-Drachnid diplomatic outpost. The mining facility, partially damaged during the battle, was rebuilt as a cultural exchange center. The same engineers who had turned mining equipment into weapons now worked alongside Drachnid architects to create spaces where both species could comfortably coexist. The human commanders' coffee diplomacy, as it came to be known throughout the galaxy, sparked a revolution in interspecies relations. The Queen, fascinated by human culture, began implementing changes in Drachnid society. She was particularly intrigued by the concept of individual creativity, something the hive mind had always considered a weakness rather than a strength. The most remarkable change I observed was in the human soldiers themselves. They took pride not in their victory, but in the peace they had achieved. The same individuals who had fought with such ferocity now spent their time teaching young Drachnids about Earth customs and learning about hive architecture in return. They called it winning the peace, another uniquely human concept that my species struggled to comprehend. As my observation mission drew to a close, I submitted my final report to the Galactic Alliance with an unprecedented recommendation that we fundamentally redesign our military doctrine to incorporate what I called the human factor. It wasn't their weapons or tactics that made them formidable. It was their ability to see possibilities where others saw only problems, to find humor in darkness, and to turn enemies into allies through unexpected gestures of humanity. The colony's story became legend in military academies across the galaxy, though each species took away different lessons. Some focused on the tactical innovations, others on the diplomatic breakthrough. But I knew the true lesson was something simpler, that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating your enemy, but from making them your friend over a simple cup of coffee. On my last day at the colony, the human commander gave me a parting gift, a small container of coffee beans. For when you need to think outside the box, they said with a knowing smile. I keep it in my quarters to this day, a reminder that in all the vastness of space, the most powerful force I've encountered isn't advanced technology or military might. It's the unpredictable, innovative, and somehow endearing nature of human beings.